I spoke to a cabinet minister about this, admittedly, before all this kicked off about a fortnight ago, and they said it's not necessarily going to be a clean coup. The alternative is just rolling anarchy for weeks and weeks and weeks on end.
The Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said once to have joked that he'll know when his time is up as PM when Morgan McSweeney tells him it is. For those who remain in number 10 this morning, that joke won't feel very funny. McSweeney's resignation could buy Starmer a little time, but it could also speed up his demise. Such was their closeness for years, and such is Starmer's increasing isolation in the party. Let's turn to the Times chief political commentator, Patrick Maguire. Patrick, morning to you.
Morning, Stig.
How bad is it for this week for Keir Starmer, do you think?
Look, it's potentially terminal, definitely abysmal, and that is the only option before the Prime Minister in the weeks to come. Either he'll have a bad week or it will be his last week in number 10. And in losing Morgan McSweeney, who for a long time pursued a strategy that the Prime Minister, in his heart of hearts, would have never signed up to and only had a sort of instrumental transactional relationship with, he has lost one of the only people left in Downing Street who would die in a ditch for him. And he is now going to have to weather all the political difficulties that lay ahead on Peter Mandelson, on elections and much else besides, and also on the unknowns to come, without the man who made him and sustained him in Downing Street and made a lot of mistakes. And he also has nobody left to sack and scapegoat for the next mistake.
What about Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor? They're at the heart of Chagos, presumably around the Mandelson appointment as well. Does attention fall upon him at all?
Well, look, yesterday, with ill timing, I just got to Anfield to watch Liverpool lose to Manchester City when my dad told me Morgan McSweeney had been sacked. So my phone then exploded, and I was really struck in the sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes after that by the number of people, of the many people in government who are big fans of Morgan McSweeney, who are lighting up my phone with invective about Jonathan Powell, saying in proximity to Peter Mandelson as a person, friend, political counsellor, and also this specific advice on the ambassadorial appointment is a problem, then Jonathan Powell should be next. The National Security Advisor should be next if this is the bar we're setting. What about the Cabinet Secretary, Chris Wormold? What about the Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office, Oliver Robbins? But Jonathan Powell is a name being taken in vain by senior people in government. And by the way, that's why I said abysmal or terminal. The guy who set your North Star on domestic politics, Morgan McSweeney, and who is the Chief of Staff, the most powerful aide in Downing Street. Then when people are saying, well, we're annoyed about that, why don't we sack the National Security Advisor and the guy who does all the foreign policy? It's really difficult to see how this government continues as a going concern under Keir Starmer's leadership for much longer. Because on Friday, in last Friday's Times, I wrote about his habit of outsourcing almost every significant decision and every significant thing this government does to other people. He's already lost the biggest contract he put out to tender, which is Morgan McSweeney, who provided him with his politics. If people are seriously going for Jonathan Powell, then what does this government have left? It just has Keir Starmer. And I think all the evidence suggests that we don't know what a government solely led by Keir Starmer under his own devices would look like, because there are lots of people who are around him who say he's probably not capable of doing politics at that level.
Is he lucky, though, that it's not clear where the coup comes from? Because Streeting is close to Mandelson. We've got Angela Rayner still investigated by HMRC, Burnham in Manchester, Ed Miliband's a tough ask for the country, you would imagine. Shabana Mahmood seems to be very quiet. Does someone need to go over the top, and who might that be?
Well, I got a text from an ally of Morgan McSweeney yesterday analysing this stuff. And they basically said, look, the cabinet has to stand up and be counted. They are complicit in this otherwise. And by this, they meant the survival of Keir Starmer for longer than is absolutely necessary for the Labour Party's political prospects. I think broadly, though, you're right about where the respective contenders stand. But it might not be. I spoke to a cabinet minister about this, admittedly, before all this kicked off about a fortnight ago. And they said, it's not necessarily going to be a clean coup. The alternative is just rolling anarchy for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. And look, Keir Starmer has sacked Morgan McSweeney effectively. They agreed that Morgan McSweeney would resign, right? So it wasn't an entirely voluntary departure. Let's look at the best case scenario, which is the Parliamentary Labour Party calms down, everybody's got their scalp, and we have 2 weeks of relative calm, which, by the way, never, ever happens when you think we're into a period of relative calm now. What is happening in just over a fortnight's time? Oh, yeah, Labour's going to lose one of its very safest seats, either to the Greens or Reform. Maybe they won't, but that is the overwhelming likelihood if you speak to people on the ground. What do we suppose is going to happen then? It might not be that Angela Rayner has her, celebratory bunting ready, but someone at that point there will lead a clamour to get rid of Keir Starmer.
Yeah. It's a great piece you've written. I love reading your stuff in the Times. Genuinely, Patrick, it's beautifully written, but it also tells me things I don't know. I look forward to reading more from you as the week progresses. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Stig.
That's Patrick Maguire, the Times chief political commentator. Let's hear now from a couple of MPs. One theme often blamed for Labour's troubles is that the party has a woman problem. Rosie Duffield's an independent MP who resigned from the Labour Party. She gave us her view on that.
It's been a recurring theme for the last few years, and I'm afraid I do think that is the case. Not just my experience, but the experience of many female colleagues, a lot of whom won't speak up in public. Over the years, I've had staffers coming to me, and other Labour women have had the same, where they feel that the general atmosphere is not pro-women. Women in the press lobby also describe the current Labour Party set up as a boys' club. It's kind of a well-used phrase now. It's just quite extraordinary that the people at the very top making the decisions, the people with the real power, are actually still men, even though there are more women MPs. So, yes, I'm afraid there is a women problem, and it's about time Labour followed other parties and had a woman leader.
That's Rosie Duffield there. The Prime Minister will address his MPs this evening in Parliament. One of those going will be Jess Asato, Labour MP for Lowestoft. We can speak to her now. Jess, morning to you.
Morning.
Is there a woman problem? It's either couched as a woman problem or a sort of old boys club at the heart of Downing Street.
Look, I think this is a make or break moment, and the public will not forgive us if we make the wrong choice by turning on the Prime Minister. And if anyone thinks that there is a magic person just waiting in the wings to lift the government's fortunes, then they've learned nothing from the chaos under the previous government. There are hard choices when you govern, and the public understands this, which is why myself and many others have been receiving emails from constituents saying that we need to back Keir to stabilise the government and also our economy. And in terms of women, the fact is that we have 3 of the 4 great positions of state held by women, and there are more women on our backbenches than there are in the whole of the Conservative opposition. And I know that women across our party are just getting on with the job of effectively governing for our country, and that is what we should be focused on.
So there's not
now.
a boys' club problem in Downing Street?
I don't think that is the case. I think that Keir is respected on the world stage. He's principled and serious, and having worked with him on violence against women and girls, which is the field that I focus on in Parliament, I know that personally he's a huge champion of this issue. After he met with Claire Thrussell, an extraordinary mother who lost her sons in the most horrendous circumstances of domestic abuse, he personally announced the repeal of the presumption of contact in the family courts, which is going to end the injustice of so many domestic abuse victims and victims of sexual violence.
And yet he prioritised having Mandelson in Washington over the concerns that he was friends with a known and convicted paedophile. So everyone says, oh, he's great on women and girls. There's a test for this. Do you have Mandelson who you want for political reasons, or do you respect the fact that he was connected to someone who had abused women and girls, and he chose the former rather than the latter?
He has apologised to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and he's also apologised for believing Mandelson's lies, and of course removed Mandelson from his position as US ambassador.
But he appointed him in the first place, as we know.
Yes, and the fact is that he has said that he didn't have the full evidence from Mandelson, and he believed him, and he shouldn't have done. With hindsight, that is an easy judgment to make, but what I judge him on is what he actually does for women and girls in our country. And there is a strong track record there of him acting to protect women and girls, including, for example, only recently ending parental responsibility for rapists with over 4 years in custodial sentences, introducing Raneem's law, which puts domestic abuse specialists in 999 courts. He is somebody I know who cares deeply about this issue.
So you've got confidence in him. But I'm just intrigued. Why is this any different from the Tories? Constant scandal, claims of a boys' club, firing of advisors to save the boss's skin. Isn't the biggest issue here that you came in promising change and you've just brought continuity politics? You're the same as the Tories. This is the same type of crisis, constant crisis the Tories had. You said you'd be different, and ultimately you've not been.
Well, I think that at each time you've seen clear and decisive action taken, and
that's what the Tories used to say.
Times.
That's what the Tories. That's precisely what the Tories used to come on. People like you, Jess, would come on this programme and say it's clear and decisive action as yet another scandal lapped at them. It's the same thing, isn't it?
Well, there were plenty of people who didn't go who should have gone much more quickly under the Conservative government. But the fact is that this happens in politics all the time. The question is what do you do for the country? And the public will not forgive us for turning internally into fights for whoever might become the next leader. This is not necessary, and we need to get on with government. Okay. We only got elected 18 months ago, and we're just about to turn the corner. We are just about to see £150 come off people's energy bills, relieving the cost of living. We have just done something extraordinary. We have ended the 2-child limit, lifting 450,000 children out of poverty. That is our governing mission, and we are getting on with the job in government. We mustn't squander it, because there is so much more that we can do with the time that we have.
Jess Asada, good to speak to you. That is Jess Asada, the Labour MP for Lowestoft, who's very much on the number 10 line, turning the corner, which of course was the theme, the Morgan McSweeney envisaged theme of 2026.